internet burp, so I'm not worried about it too much. By the way, everybody, hi everybody, welcome and like the stream as you're entering in. It'll take a moment for it to come back, and then we'll be up again. But just hit that like again in case it's a separate stream, if you don't mind, and send everybody over here if they get lost or whatever. Twitch is easy. Twitch people just hit your toss some bits and hang out. Facebook, same deal. But YouTube, that it sometimes creates a whole new stream. So if everybody needs to bounce or refresh, we'll give them time to do that. But this is what happens. Apparently, we could say anything on this stream. We can go against Mother Russia. We can attack Donald Trump. But once we start making fun of Gainesville, Florida, shit starts to get real. It's very dangerous. So we're back, and we're here with my dear friend Philip Bittner, who is stateside for a short little bit. And needless to say, we have a lot of catching up to do across the board.
Yep.
First of all, just on a general, I'm amazed that you're in Gainesville in general. I'm amazed that anyone's in Gainesville, and I don't mean, yeah.
Well, a friend of mine got hit hard with Hurricane Ian, I guess it was, and so they moved inland.
I see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm visiting him.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's it's nice that you get to actually see some friends and take a beat in this. There's obviously a lot still going on in Ukraine.
Back in Ukraine,
yeah. One of the I mean, there's all kinds of stories. Obviously, the bizarre meat grinder aspect of like, I guess both fronts, both on the Dnipro side, for all the stories about how like there's been soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers, talking to the New York Times about how rough it is and holding ground and pushing across into this, and that it's dangerous and they get shelled, and sounds like war. I get it. But they are defending their country in this process. And the same thing with the territory, like the northern territory, where they're losing, the Russians are losing 1,000 soldiers a day on average.
Yep.
And
it does seem like the Russians are making some incremental advances.
Right.
In the Avdiivka, Bakhmut, that northern front that you're referring to. But see, I still don't understand why they're so fixated on that part of the country, because it's just one transportation hub after another. And so there's no real advantage for grabbing any one of these towns. You're just going to go to the next town and have the same fight over and over and over again. Whereas the Ukrainians are except for what they have to exert to defend in that northern sector, they're concentrating on crossing the physical barrier of the Dnieper River,
right?
Well, which will make a huge tactical advantage for the Ukrainians, which will change the shape of the war. So I don't know why the Russians are fixated on the north. They really should be trying to push the Ukrainians back onto the other side of the river, and they're just not doing it. I mean, they are attacking, but they're not throwing everything that they've got at it, and they should. So, I've seen these things from the New York Times. I've seen the arguments that they really got pelted as they made the crossing, but they've made the crossing. They're on the left bank of the river, and they're holding it. They're not. It's not.
They didn't lose it. Yeah, unlike the Avdiivka area, which is this like roll back and forward. And again, that's strategically getting the other side of a water of that river in particular. But seizing land on the opposite side of a water crossing and holding it is crucial and strategically important in a battle. Seizing like basically farm fields that are unproductive farm fields that are full of mines and all kinds of other shit, and then losing it and then seizing it again, and then losing it and then seizing it again, which is literally, I've been watching this over the last 2 weeks, especially in Avdiivka, in the area around Avdiivka. Every place where the Russians make claims of gains, there are no buildings. There's no trenches. They haven't laid claim to anything that's functional. I mean, you're not going to move in there and put up a bunch of fucking Quonset huts all of a sudden and turn it into a functional piece of land to hold, and then create a wall, and then like it's some sort of old, like, I don't know, like Scotland versus the English finding just like a small hillside where you guard it and create rows of archers, and then build a wall behind it, and then move the wall forward incrementally. They used to have those. The Romans were known for their walls on wheels, which is, by the way, where Trump gets his bullshit walls and wheels thing, his fixation. I'm not kidding. This dumb motherfucker, he's like, walls and wheels. They
Mhm.
always were the wheels and the wheels and the walls. Yeah, the Romans used to,
Well,
because of archers, they would
yeah.
have these walls on wheels, like, and just roll them forward, and so it would just basically protect the soldiers from arrows, and then they would roll it forward. It's just fucking logs on a cart, essentially.
Mm,
Jesus Christ! And even
yeah. Well,
that,
and
there's no
speaking
version of
of
that even in Avdiivka.
no, no, and well, and also, I mean, now that the ground is starting to freeze,
Hmm.
um, holding defensive lines is going to be very difficult. Well, I say very difficult. It's going to be more difficult than when you could maybe dig in and you could dig trenches and the rest of it, because
Right.
now it's permafrost and it's almost. Whereas down south, while you are still going to have to hold the territory that you take, it's a far more the issue in the south is far more about maneuverability,
Hmm.
because the objective is to get to the sea.
Right.
We've talked about this many times. The objective is to get to the sea. If they can get to the Sea of Azov, cut
Yeah.
the land bridge,
Thank you,
and
Treva.
really bring Crimea, and really bring Crimea onto the negotiation table, it will be devastating for Putin.
Yeah.
I mean, really devastating. And I know there's an election coming up, and I even saw, like, now what, 17 people have registered to vote. Putin will. It's not a democracy, so Putin will not win uh, legitimately.
Right.
But he might still be able to hold on. But again, if they can keep moving and push, and the other advantage that the Ukrainians have is that they don't have to necessarily build defensive lines in open fields, because this is their territory. They're, by and large, with some exceptions, but by and large, they roll up into a village, and the villagers are like, "Thank God we're liberated. You can stay in our houses.
Hmm.
You can defend from our houses."
Right. Right.
Sort of thing. I mean, that does have, obviously, I'm oversimplifying things by a significant factor, but they do have that advantage. There are very few pro-Russian villages in Ukraine,
Right.
even in the Donbass, who are going to say, "Yeah, Russian soldiers, you can bivouac here, no problem." Whereas the Ukrainians do have that advantage.
Right.
Look, it's the winter is going to be a weird period of time. Uh, on the front line. Again, the objective is to get to the sea. What I find heartening is this
Yeah.
rapid advance, the rapid announcements of from several countries that they are going to really beef up Ukraine's air defense capabilities.
Yep.
Germany is sending 2 more Patriot missile systems. One of them has got to go to Odessa.
Hmm.
Absolutely has to go to Odessa, because Odessa is. I mean, this is the other thing that's been happening since we last spoke, and it's unfortunate that I'm going to have to kind of book a little bit early because I got a plane to catch.
Okay.
But since we've spoken last, so much has happened. And one of the things that's happened is, while the world's attention has been transferred from Ukraine to Gaza and Israel, they have been getting pelted. I mean,
Yeah.
I got a friend of mine who just came out of Kherson, and she said that it was almost hourly that they
Yeah.
were getting attacked. And that's punishment, and arguably an attack on the infrastructure supporting the cross river breach that the Ukrainians have done. But they are getting absolutely, and then Kharkiv is getting pelted, Odessa is getting pelted. I mean,
Yeah.
Kiev is getting a massive amount of attacks, but thankfully, because of the air defense systems that we have in the capital,
Hmm.
uh, not most of the damage is from falling debris, even including, unfortunately, warheads. And
Right.
they've been using more hypersonic missiles and things like that. So they are making life difficult for even residents of Kiev. But one of those Patriot systems has got to go to Odessa.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I mean, I don't know. Do you send it to a frontline position so that you can have air power and the Russians are deprived of it? We
Right.
we
I
shall
mean, I think you
see.
can move it. If you move it to Kherson, it can be used because of its proximity to protect the Dnipro crossing, that area,
Yeah,
depending on where they want to
exactly.
go, somewhere
Exactly.
around that area. I
Exactly.
mean, and they're
Or
not
if
going to
you
say,
wanted to,
right.
yeah, or if you wanted to send it up north to the Avdiivka, Bakhmut,
Yeah, but they're not
Kramatorsk,
getting okay. They're not
that
getting
they don't necessarily have to, but that's an
right,
option. An option.
right.
My
They-
if as an armchair general, I think Odessa and Kherson.
yeah, agreed. And I think you're more than likely that's exactly that area is where it's going to happen. There are a
If
couple
I
of
was a betting man.
yeah, there are a couple of stories that I would like to bring to your attention real quick. The first one being this guy right here, which is apparently the Russians have a rat
Mhm.
problem. So
Mhm.
apparently this is one of the things. There's rat bite fever, which is I have to say the original demo of the Ted Nugent song I think never would have been as big had he used the original lyrics. But rat bite fever has been recorded in many Russian units in the Kupiansk front, increasing discontent amongst them. I mean, imagine trench foot and rat bite fever, and your no bullets, and your commander is
Yeah.
telling you to run on your feet where the skin is falling
And
off.
their
Like,
trenches their trenches are awful,
yeah,
compared to the Ukrainian trenches. I mean, Ukrainian trenches are pretty awful, as they are, additionally, but at least they make it as livable as possible.
yeah,
It's not an easy thing to do. The Russians live in squalor.
yeah.
They don't reinforce their. I mean, and I'm saying this from just repeated
Hmm.
reports, and
Yeah.
even like friends and colleagues that I have who have been to the Russian trenches as they've been taken over by Ukrainians, and
Hmm.
they're shocked at what they find. The Ukrainians rock up there, and they live in their own filth.
Yeah.
They live with bodies. There's the other issue is
Yeah.
that
Bodies
bodies are not
everywhere.
being collected. We know that the Russians are not collecting their bodies
Hmm.
of their dead servicemen, so their soldiers are living amongst the dead.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that contributes to the amount of rats that are in the trenches with the Russian soldiers. I mean, it's absolutely tragic, the whole thing. And I've seen videos of like some trenches and dugouts where they
Yeah.
put like plastic to keep to
Hmm.
insulate in essence and to keep
Yeah.
the mud directly off of you, but you can see rats moving around inside the plastic, between the
Ugh.
plastic and the earthworks. I mean, it's stuff of nightmares.
Yeah.
So that's been going on, and the
And
Russians don't care.
if you're sick in an environment like that and you go to
Hmm.
sleep and nobody's there to get the rats off of you,
Hmm.
fucking hell. Like
Yep.
like it's the same issue they have with like in like Myanmar, Burma. There are both farmed pigs and wild boar, and
Hmm.
they will use them as torture. They'll string people up and basically have the pigs eat them while they're alive. But they also have a problem with the wild boars that if wounded soldiers or whatever are trying to hide from someplace, the boars will sniff them out and just chew you to pieces. What like it's just I mean horrifying. And and
Yeah.
rats do that, but it takes dozens, if not hundreds of them to do it, and they all once one of them starts. Ugh, it's just goddamn. It's
Hmm.
terrible. So, anyways, the symptoms of rat bite fever, in case some of you are worrying about whether or not you have it, include a severe headache, a rise in body temperature to 40 degrees, which it's bad. Rashes and redness, a decrease in blood pressure, hemorrhages in the eyes, nausea and vomiting several times a day.
And I'm
Um,
betting that's 40. I'm betting obviously that's Celsius,
Celsius.
40 degrees
Yes,
Celsius,
yes, your body.
which
Yeah,
would be 110. That's
yeah,
110 Fahrenheit.
yeah. 106 to 110, depending
Jeez.
on the range. Yeah, right. So, ugh.
Yeah.
Fucking
Jeez.
hell. So
Oof.
the other one is
And they don't
there's
care. They don't
this
care.
yeah. So there is an increasing belief too
Mm.
that this bombing campaign that they're on right now while the world is distracted with Israel and Gaza, which by the way is also fading into the background as far as people are bouncing back to because
Mhm.
as the we're in the 76th day of the Israel Hamas war at this point.
October to December. So
If
yeah.
if you
Yeah.
believe it actually stopped when Yasser Sinwar Yasser Sinwar sent a note to Netanyahu in Hebrew saying, "Hey, take a chance on a calculated ceasefire. We'll work with you." And it turned out that was all a rope-a-dope plan to lure them into a false sense of security, while they literally like built up arms underneath maternity wards and all kinds of like Jesus
Mhm.
Christ. The and
No,
can
it's
I
like the same
yeah.
it's like the same argument that they say about, about, Boris Johnson coming and scuttling the
Yeah,
peace
right.
deal at the beginning of the Ukraine war. He wasn't there was not they were not being honest about that.
Yeah.
They were reconfiguring for another, go at Odessa. I
Yeah.
mean, we even talk now currently, there are talks from the Russians saying, "Oh, we might be open to talks." Um, the Ukrainians don't trust the Russians any more than they can throw them
Why the
underhand,
fuck would
with
they
good reason.
right. Why
With
the
good
fuck
reason.
would you?
So all this talk from coming out of the Kremlin, all this talk coming out of Moscow of we might be open to the idea of negotiations with the unspoken prerequisite of we get to keep what we've stolen,
Right.
including your children.
Well, that's exactly it. So this is
Do you think the
like
Ukrainians are going to accept that?
that's
I'm betting
this is
no.
this should settle it for anybody who's on the fence about what Vladimir Putin wants or what he's okay with. He, in his annual press conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin made it clear that he will be ready for a peace settlement with Ukraine only after he has achieved his goals. Does anybody know what his goals are? The elimination of Ukraine as a country, the elimination of the
Yeah.
language of Ukraine, and the decimation of
Yeah.
their functioning government. And that's only if you're not including half of Poland and all of Moldova or any bullshit his
Mhm.
cabinet or his press people have been saying about bombing fucking Berlin. First, yeah, just the standard, just the baseline of Ukraine will be ours again, and then we'll talk about
Yeah.
peace, meaning we'll
And
pick who we're
you
going to
know what
fucking
else was
hang.
interesting?
Get out
You
of
know
here.
what else was interesting during that end of year conference that he held was
Yeah,
him talking about how Odessa has always been Russian. Odessa will always be Russian. I have been to Odessa I've been to Odessa many times over my life, but since the beginning of the full scale war, I have been there 4 times. And I can tell you categorically, the people of Odessa will never accept Russian occupation.
hmm
Odessa will never be Russian again. But it does indicate how deluded the Russians are that they think that they will be able to regain it. I mean, this is the city that Catherine the Great established, and this whole sense of empire for the Russians and their sense of self. And they are so deluded that they think that they can take Odessa back. Again, I've been to Odessa. I've spent time in Odessa, a lot of time in
no,
Odessa. They hate the Russians. And I'll tell
right.
you what it was. It was the church. The church was the straw that broke the camel's
The
back.
bombing of the
When
church.
they
Yeah,
the bombing
yeah.
of the church, it was a 17th century, 18th century church, beautiful, beautiful church, and a debris from an attacking missile came down on it, and the entire city came out and cleaned it themselves. They didn't
Yeah.
wait for like the fire brigade. They didn't. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And there's stubborn people in Odessa.
hmm
Odessa has a kind of a weird identity, kind of like this very kind of like we're this unique, special place, kind of like San Franciscans who are like, oh, we live in God's country. We've got the wine country right on our doorstep, and the Pacific, and all the rest of it. They kind of think they're this special thing,
Right.
and they don't. When they change their when they come to a conclusion about something, they don't change easily. So I
Right.
welcome the Russians to go and have another run at Odessa. You will be absolutely decimated, and in one fell swoop. Putin has lost Odessa. He has lost half of Russia's entire naval power because the Baltic Sea Fleet is now boxed in because Finland has joined NATO, and the situation in the Black Sea is such that the entire Black Sea Fleet has now had to leave Crimea and go to the eastern shores of the Black Sea. It has
hmm
already happened that these catastrophic historic changes have happened.
Right.
The difference is it hasn't sifted down to the Russian people. And
Yeah.
the sad and cynical thing about it, and I've been giving this a lot of thought, and one of the things that I think is so depressing about what's happening in this war is that you see the Russian people accepting these massive losses of life.
Yeah.
That is inescapable. I believe that the vast majority of the Russian population realizes that they have lost hundreds of thousands of men in this war already.
Yeah.
But cynically and sadly, and partly because the ruling elite in Russia have elicited the kind of mythology of the Second World War, where they paid this great cost, and now we're paying a great cost again, but we're the ones fighting for freedom and against the fascists in the West.
Right.
It's not the body count that's going to break Russia. It's the loss of face. It's
Hmm.
the loss of empire. It's the loss of their sense of self as empire. So
Hmm.
when the land bridge is severed, when Odessa is clearly no longer ever going to be a Russian city ever again,
Yeah.
this will be devastating to their sense of pride and identity. So they'll put up with everybody keeps going, well, what's the number? What's the one number of casualties that'll break the Russians? There isn't one. There
Yeah.
isn't one.
They'll have to
What
run
will
out,
break the
literally
Russians?
run out.
Yeah,
Now,
they'll
yeah.
literally have to run out.
I would argue, by the way, that they are already broken. It's just a matter of time for the last card falls, because you've got a million
Yeah.
military age men who have fled Russia, who are living in Georgia or hidden in Europe or whatever, because they don't want to fight in this war, specifically. And remember all the talk about like draft dodgers in the United States who fled to because didn't want to fight in Vietnam, so they fled to Canada and other places until the war was over, and then we had like congressional hearings about it. We had John Kerry famously saying his testimony being like what do you say the last man to die for a lie,
For a
essentially, like
lost
the
cause.
yeah, for a
Yeah,
lost cause,
who wants to be the last man to
a
die
man to
for a
die for
lost
a lie,
cause?
right? Yeah. And so we had a big conversation about that, post that, and an understanding that conscientious objectors and the like, and by the way, there were pro-communist, hope they overthrow us and destroy our government folks amongst those crowd, but there were like this many of them. The rest of them just didn't want to go to Southeast Asia and kill a bunch of people for no particular fucking reason, which I think shows taste and breeding on their part, and a lot of them had to flee to Canada to do it. um on the other hand, in Russia, there's no court or congressional hearing or Duma hearing when they come back, because they're not fucking coming back. Why would they?
Mhm.
Why would you ever? If your home country, if you're now in one of these other countries and you're like, I don't have to go back, I'll just have a life here. What the fuck? What did I have there in the first place? It was already kind of shit. Unless you want to live under a thumb like that. I'm better off now. My family's better off now. I'll form ties over here. It doesn't matter. And one day, if when Putin dies, maybe we'll find a way to go back. But until that time, no fucking way. So,
Well, it's why you see the protests that do exist. The very few meager
right,
protests that do exist are being conducted by women and
right.
the mothers
Because
of the
the male
soldiers.
protest was, I'm
The
getting the
wives
fuck out of here, because they'll
and
throw you in a van and off you go. Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you'll be thrown in a van and be given the option of either you go to a heavy labor penal camp or you go to the front.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the option there. That's that kind of thing that they do. So the men aren't going to go out on the streets, but you are seeing the mothers and wives are going out. How,
Yeah.
whether that'll be effective, I don't know. Again, I don't think there's a death toll that's going to until we get into the crazy numbers, until we get into
Hmm.
like the million dead kind of ballpark. Because it's not about the amount of, because he has elicited the Second World War. And in Russia, the Second World War is beyond history. It is religion. It is mythology. Everybody has a story about how
Hmm.
their family
Yeah.
fought or resisted or struggled or whatever through the Second World War. And Putin has billed this war as an extension of the Second World War. We didn't
Yeah.
finish what needed to be done in Ukraine. That's why he talks about Nazis in Ukraine. That's why he talks about all this kind of World War II terminology, because he is, and that that is drawing on people and the society to be like, because of the sheer numbers that were lost in the Second World War, it's almost a privilege to die for the state in this same kind of fight. So it's not going to be a number that changes this. It's going to be an embarrassment. It's
Hmm.
going to be a loss of
Well,
territory.
that's
It's going
I
to
gotta say,
be
right? But I gotta say, like at a certain point, and maybe this is the if you're looking for a distinction, I hear a lot of folks, especially on my side of the aisle, talking about how like borders and nations are all of human construction and they don't really mean anything or whatever until you realize that our borders are based around a constitutional area, that we operate a certain type of government and a certain level of protections for the citizenry, and so inside that border you're treated a certain way, and outside that border we can't guarantee how you're treated. That's how these borders work. That's how they always worked. And that even applies to people who do it badly. Inside my border, I can do whatever the fuck I want to these people. The only reason my border stops is because somebody's stopping me from doing whatever I want to those people. But if I can move my
Mhm.
border farther, then I can fuck up those people the way I do my own. And that's what Putin's going for. And that's the distinction between what a nation really means, what a flag really
And
stands for. It's what it
additionally,
really, yeah.
and
So,
additionally, as he pushes forward out and gains territory, he can use that for his own internal use by saying, look how I am making our nation greater. Look
right.
how I am expanding our power. I'm expanding our territory. And we are, you have to understand the mentality in Russia is very different when the relationship between the individual and the state. The
Right.
individual doesn't mean shit unless
Right.
you're incredibly wealthy
Well,
and
that's
much
where I
money,
get to the
or an
embarrassment part.
oligarch.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about in
Exactly.
terms of the embarrassment level. Because in the
Yes.
United States, because of the standards that we have, say what people will, and the fucking America bad crowd will always like dance around this bullshit. But the reality is they were the folks, and I was along with them around Iraq War and other stuff like that. Once we started hitting certain numbers where 1,000 dead or 2,000 dead or 2,500 dead or 5,000 dead, it increasingly ratcheted up our our anger and disenfranchisement with how the government was running and whether we should be in Iraq in the first fucking place, and how it was wrong to start with, and whether the mission in Afghanistan was worth what it was doing, all that shit. Like as that number, and that was a relatively small number of human beings considering the people who were fighting there, the volume of soldiers we had there, the number of killed and injured compared to what the fuck is going on with Russia. Like we are as a nation embarrassed by that number. When it starts to go up like that, we're like, no, 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 that's not supposed to fucking happen. That because that's either a failure of our ability to protect our soldiers when they're in harm's way, or it's a failure of our country being in a war zone we shouldn't be in because the mission is not clear or worthwhile or has no ethical basis to it or whatever. Those two base points are embarrassing and shameful to the United States, and they should be. It is the standard by which we have increasingly hung ourselves to. And I would argue we've even overstepped it in certain areas, making us gun shy about sending in soldiers along with UN peacekeeper forces, for example, in areas where we could have helped, like Rwanda, like Sudan, places like that. That we're so
Mhm.
fucking gun shy and ashamed of soldiers coming home in flag draped coffins and angry about it that we are even afraid to do it in some cases where it is a worthwhile mission. We are gun shy about it mainly because of
Srebrenica.
the yeah, mainly about the mythology about the parts of the Vietnam War story and other stuff ever
Mhm.
since then. Fucking and this idea of, I guess, I don't know, Reagan's small missions down to fucking liberating 9 surfers on a beach someplace and calling it a big mission, right? So those, whereas the Russians are like, can you imagine as a nation not being embarrassed by a death toll of your soldiers that is higher than the COVID deaths in your country
Mhm.
and are specific to one sex and one class of one age class? Yeah, Grenada. Fucking hell. Like, how are you not
Yeah, no,
embarrassed by that?
well, well, it's also because argue whether or not
Mm,
it is truly a country of the people, for the people, and by the people. You can argue how effective that is, but at least that's our ideal,
hmm.
as opposed to Russia, where that ideal is seen as naive, it is seen as
Right.
simplistic, it is scoffed at, And
Hmm.
the idea, the mentality in Russia is that the people exist to support the state. And
Yeah.
so if the state is powerful, it is by that is how the people are powerful. But the people are simply grist for the mill for the state,
Hmm.
which is why I keep coming back to this idea of it's not going to be how many Russian soldiers die in
It's gonna
Ukraine.
be land,
It's going to be how much. It's going to be land. It's going to
fucking
be land.
property.
And if yep,
And in a country
it's
where,
so
by the way,
cynical and dark.
it's fucking stupid. And the idea that
Which is
like
why the Ukrainians,
the amount of,
which by the way,
yeah,
which is why the Ukrainians are fighting so hard, because
yeah,
they have the same mentality as we do, that the
yeah,
people are the state and the state are the people. And that's why they're
hmm,
fighting so hard,
right.
because the alternative that Moscow offers them means hundreds of thousands can die. And it's just sloughed off because for a
Again
greater
and
Russia.
again. This okay, this and
And
this
again
kind of
and
goes to
again.
what we're seeing with like Hamas versus Israel right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
conversation that I hear that is again, any pundit who has not watched the videos that Hamas put up on their Telegram channel and that they still do, what they're fighting and where they're fighting, because Hamas posts all the time them firing rockets at tanks and that kind of stuff, and like those videos, and they make these like kind of sexy ISIS videos that they post on their Telegram channels. You know what's always right next to these guys while they're doing it, besides like arms that are clearly Russian? The fucking rocket launchers they have are Russian. They've all got Kalashnikovs. They've all got AK-47s. You know what's always right nearby besides gun belts and shit? A fucking 12-year-old boy. That's what. Every one of these groups, when they're posting these fucking videos, there's 4 dudes firing at soldiers, IDF soldiers in tanks or whatever, and there's always these 10 and 12-year-old runner boys running ammo, running communications, carrying physical messages, and all that kind of shit. They post that shit. So yesterday, and again, everybody knows that, say what you will about like the separation of the Palestinian territories and West Bank and the Palestinians versus Hamas and all that kind of shit. And you can make your, like, we could have a huge conversation about that kind of shit. And it's very much aligned with the fact that Russia and Iran are aligned, and Iran and Hamas are aligned. There's a strategy going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That there was that part of this pop up clearly was intentional. Draw attention away from this. It's time. Throw them a
100%.
bone and let them start this shit. Right. And that was part of it. But so I just want to remind people who the mullahs in Iran versus the people of Iran, because again, I would argue that without the mullahs, without the religious dominating the religious domination of their particular government, Iran becomes the fucking Paris of the Middle East again. Because everybody there, I mean, if you look at the folks there, when they're left to their own devices, the women, cover their hair in mosque when they're being pious, but the rest of the time they don't, because they have a choice and they show that choice. And that's how it should be. Women are educated. Women are like all the things that you want from a society for women, that happens there. But when the aligned groups, and this is very much in line with our conversation about what Russia thinks of human beings under its care, and Iran's government thinks of people under its care, and Hamas would institute, and I think this is the thing people need to understand, Hamas in charge of Palestine or any Palestinian territory, or even Israel itself, or this Palestinian territory where Israel doesn't exist. What happens after that? What goes on in that country after Israel is gone? What happens? What happens to the people that live there after it happens? And I'll show you what fucking happens. This is what happens. Iran yesterday hung a child bride for murdering her abusive husband. She was forcibly married to him when she was 15 years old. She had 2 children with him before she was 17 years old. When he beat her so badly that when she was 19, she killed him in self-defense. She has been in jail ever since and hasn't seen her children in a decade. Yesterday, they hung her, along with dozens of other people. Half of them women, by the way. In the United States, there is a very distinct difference between there is a huge sexual imbalance in prisons. Women get 6 years on average, 6 to 10 years on average, fewer years in jail for the same crime as men do, because we factor in this aspect of domestic violence and other stuff into a lot of these things. So statistically, that's how a lot of this works out. But 1-to-1, there are way more fucking men in jail than there are women, mostly because men commit most of the crimes. Men are, statistically speaking, we're the ones that kill people. We kill each other. We get killed defending people, and we kill people while defending others. We take a lot of the brunt of shit, and men end up involved in a lot of this shit. Men go out from the drug house and get shit and come back and bring it back, and they get killed in the process. That's how it works. Yeah, testosterone, the struggle is real. In Iran, there's a closer to parity, male to female, and in some cases there are more women because women commit smaller offenses towards the state by not covering their head and doing this kind of shit.
Well,
that is
now Roe's been overturned.
Well, no, I mean in the United States,
I'm being facetious.
Totally.
I'm being facetious.
No, it's gonna absolutely affect
it's still
the vote next year. Yeah, that's what there's a certain level of religious nuts that want this. But I'm just pointing out real quick that there is an imbalance in the number of women versus men in Iranian jails, as far as what we would consider real crimes that put people in jail for a long period of time, because women have a higher standard because they are considered to be inherently sinful, inherently evil, and guilty until proven innocent in almost every category.
Right. And because they have their morality laws.
Yes.
They have their morality laws. They can chuck women in for being those seductresses who show their hair.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're very privileged in the West for the rights and the laws and the the way we view the relationship between law and state and the individual.
Yeah.
It is not like that in the rest of the world. I can tell you, having traveled a lot of this world,
not at all.
We are the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
But the other thing, you brought up something interesting, and I want to touch on it because we haven't had a chance to talk because I missed last Saturday.
Yeah.
was we talk about Russia coordinating with Hamas and Iran and this coalition that has been kind of built in many ways, mostly by Moscow. The sooner we recognize that Russia considers itself at war with us, that the war in Ukraine is just one battlefront in a larger global war that they consider themselves to be engaged in directly with the United States, with the British as an adjunct.
Right.
That is their mentality. And why am I bringing that up? I am bringing that up because of the missing binder that broke last week. The 10-inch binder that Meadows was running
of raw Russian data.
Raw Russian intel about the interference in the 2016 election. We need to stop fucking around. We need to realize, even if we don't want to be at war with Russia, I have no desire to go directly at war with Russia, but the Russians consider themselves
at war with us,
at war with the United States. And we better start recognizing that that's their mentality. They're going to mess around with us in the coming election. They haven't stopped messing around with us since the 2016 election. They're going to be doing it on a global scale. They're going to be doing it within NATO and the NATO alliances. We need to recognize that Russia thinks it's at war with us.
Yeah.
The West in particular, the West in general, but the US in particular. And start working from that mentality. Even if we don't like the idea of being at war with Russia, we better recognize that they think they're at war with us, and we better start reacting and behaving accordingly.
Again, this goes back to, and I think there's a certain level of naivete, we talk about in the 91 switchover where we're like, oh, finally, they're going to wake up to the fact that they'll be better off if things are just free and open. And quite frankly, they were. The people in general, the oligarch class wasn't, and I've made this argument for a couple of years now that increasingly, by putting somebody like Vladimir Putin effectively in charge, a guy who staged apartment building bombings and then used those as his way to get into office, and it's not even a conspiracy theory; it's just genuinely true.
I was there.
Yeah, right. That Russia in general, like this has been a rope-a-dope, that at least amongst his class. The rest of the Russians on the ground, the regular citizenry, might have thought, oh, fuck, we're opening up. Finally, this is great. They bought into it as much as Westerners did. But Putin's class and the guys surrounding him went, yeah, we'll just what Mao said, or Deng Xiaoping, I believe it was quoted it last, but like hide your strength and bide your time. That he said that fucking Deng Xiaoping said that like right around the time the Soviet Union fell. And that was like, okay, we don't like play with these fuckers. We're next because we can't hold up the structure of this shit. So we need to finance our war machine through pretending to be friends with these assholes for a while. And that's what they did for a long time. And I think increasingly it looks like Russia was like, oh, okay, the biggest weapon we can use against the West genuinely is their naivete that people yearn to be free, and given half the chance, they will do that, and they will, in that process, that the leadership will follow. That the ruling class of a country will recognize, holy fuck, the vast majority of these people want to be free, and therefore, if I want to curry favor with them, I've got to actually give them freedom instead of fake giving them freedom, I suppose, in this particular case with Vladimir Putin. But it looks like, to me, the whole thing's looked like increasingly like a fucking rope-a-dope. And that the Cold War never ended for them. And that's the reality we're kind of waking up to. That it was always like, everybody's like, motherfucker. Like it's 3-card Monty, on the fucking L train.
Well, again, like, and I've said it.
I won twice, and I thought I could win the third time, so I put it all down, and that's the moment. The minute you put the money down on the thing, you realize this motherfucker got me, and that's what this is. It's fucking 3-card Monty.
And in our hubris, hubris isn't exactly the right word, but it's as close as I can find until I find another word. We thought that our system inherently would be the one that would go east. What happened was their corruption and their just all sorts
subterfuge
of stuff. That came, their subterfuge and their malign intent came west. We thought democracy, that rule of law, becoming a member of the family of nations and operating with the same rules on the global stage, that's what the Russians would adopt after 91 and the collapse of the Soviet Union. That did not happen. Alternatively, what happened was their and I'm sorry, this is not a right word either, but their poison came west.
Yeah.
And we had better recognize it. We'd better, and we are in some ways. I think we are. I think at least there are sectors of our leadership in the West that are going like, oh, you can't work with these people. You lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And that's a good thing.
Well, the Republicans are categorically right now in two groups, it seems. Right now they are stuck in two groups. One is I told you so malign actor fear-based point of it, which mostly is aligned with China. And they kind of tacitly mean Russia as well, because it's the same belief system. That's why you have some Republicans, especially the older ones, referring to Russia as the USSR or as a communist state now, because they're really talking about a dictatorial state and its alignment with China and what's the fucking difference. And Russia's a satellite state of China at this point, while they're claiming that we are, which is such fucking bullshit. But the other half of the Republican Party seem to have entered this kind of like, if you can't beat them, join them crowd with the Russians, with the Chinese.
They're
to
fellow
some degree.
Travelers.
Yeah, they believe in. They believe. Look at Trump and his whole dictator bullshit.
100%. They'll give lip service to the democracy. They'll give lip service to the Constitution when it suits them. But at the end of the day, they're fellow travelers with the autocracies that we're currently fighting against.
Right.
It's my old Lincoln quote of like, we can either pretend to believe, we can either fight for the beliefs of all men are created equal and democracy and all the rest of it, but the other side only pretends to. If they actually ever get in power, you might as well just move to Russia, because why even pretend anymore?
Right. Yeah. And which reminds me, and I know you got to take off because you got a plane to catch, but I wanted to address this. We have some questions about this, and this is about the disappearance of Navalny. So Russian courts, Russian courts have halted their judicial proceedings against him. His trials effectively have come to a halt because of his, his not showing up or not being there, not being found. The UN are saying it's a forced disappearance, that the Russians did it. The courts seem to be acting like, we don't know where the fuck he went, which either means he's dead and they're pretending,
Mhm.
which is probably the most likely thing because of their history. They kill people who don't like Putin enough. So the idea that Alexei Navalny is safe is fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
But
And their
it also,
prisons are their prison system is not only highly violent,
yeah,
which is not unusual anywhere in the world, but it's also a cesspool for disease, for just maltreatment. They don't put
yeah,
any money. Well, we've talked about this before, you and I as well. Is
yeah,
that one thing you have to understand about Russia is that the state puts next to nothing into doing things like orphanages, old people's homes,
mhm,
prisons. If you are subject to the state, if
yeah,
your continued existence relies on support or structure from the state, you're fucked.
mhm,
You're fucked because they don't care. They'll
right,
just throw you in. I mean, like tuberculosis is rampant in Russian prisons.
right,
they don't care. They
right.
don't care.
Well, there's
So
a leftover. There's a
Navalny might have
go ahead.
died, might have
Mm.
died because of any number of reasons, and they may
Right,
be covering it up.
right. They may just have like just thrown him on the pile with everybody else who died of the same thing at that particular place after the floor collapsed because it was
Mhm.
wet. Like that,
Yeah.
there's a myriad of things. There's also a lot of leftover stuff from the USSR that functionally help their financial position that the state kept going, which is effectively that when you have a system based on workers' rights and the workers of the world unite and the workers talk or whatever, once you cease being able to work, you lose your value to the state. And so
Mhm.
what naturally occurred both in China and Russia as an offshoot of communism, and that they were shooting for. I would argue that both of them have not achieved communism, but the goal is to move there, whatever. And on the road to communism is all this shit. Is that they just decided, once you can't work a field, you've outlived your usefulness, and you're for the betterment of everybody around you, you ought to be fertilizer. And so there's an element of
Mhm.
prisoners, especially, that the only prisoners that are worth a fuck is some that you might need to turn into murderers later in another country, which is what they've done. They house the only people they keep healthy are people they might want to set loose. We'll let you be you want to shorten your sentence. We'll turn you into a soldier, and we'll hold your family hostage, of course, but we'll make you a soldier and we'll send you to Africa or Georgia or in this case Ukraine. And if you can make
Mhm.
it back, you get you don't your sentence is effectively commuted. And by the way, they've had a couple people do that. They've had a couple of people
Mhm.
who served their
Yeah.
term, came back, and then murdered a bunch of fucking people because that's who they are.
Yep.
And then they had one dude
Yep.
who was a murderer who they put on the front lines, killed 3 of his comrades, killed his own buddies, and then started walking back to Russia. They ended up, they killed him at like a second checkpoint inside Russia because he like shot at some people and that kind of, because he was basically just like a fucking nutter. He was
Mhm.
a murderer. They just set him loose. They figured if you just point the murderer in a certain direction, he'll just only murder west. And he just fucking started like, no, I just stab. That's what my thing. I'm just into the stabby thing. And he fucking walked. He walked like, I want to say like 80 miles back to Russia and killed a guy at a checkpoint, and then was killed. He was shot to death, like hiding in a trench next to a fucking checkpoint, waiting for the shift change or some shit, because he was going to kill them, then just go to town and start doing whatever he was doing before they threw him in fucking jail in the first place. Holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, again, and by the way, that dude they fed. That dude, if you remember when Prigozhin went to the prisons, those places looked rock solid. Where all the murderers and rapists were kept, that was a functional building. Looked relatively new. Where Navalny is, probably a fucking old castle, right? Anyways, yeah, I know
I
you got to
mean,
go,
we
so
don't. Yeah, we don't.
yeah,
I
we
do.
don't.
I do. And
Yeah,
and next time I talk to you, I'll probably be back in Europe. So
okay,
I got everything taken care of. I needed to take care of it in the States. So
excellent.
I'll head back overseas, and I'll see you then. So I apologize for the shortness of this
Not at all. Take
little
off and
chat,
and
but as
follow his
always
vlogs.
lovely to see you.
You too, brother. Philip Ittner on YouTube and all your other social medias. Ittner Philip on the Shitter
Go
Machine. And
Gators.
Go Gators, I guess. Right, sure. And not really,
Whatever.
because
No.
a lot of what they do is not very nice, the actual ones. I'm just saying. Yeah. So,
All
anyways,
right.
thanks,
Well,
brother, so much.
happy
Tr-
holidays, everybody.
yeah,
We'll
you
talk
too.
soon. Next time I see you, I'll be in Europe.
All right.
All
Safe
right.
travels, my friend.
Love you all. Thank you,
Yeah.
guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
There he goes. Thanks. Okay. After a bit of a kerfuffle, we managed to get through that. Thanks everybody for hanging in there when we had to switch over when we got. I think it was the deep state. Pretty sure it was the deep state. The deep state did the deep state right. Thank you guys. Hold on, I've got to push this forward. Also, hit that like, share the show. Good morning, hello. Capitalism is everyone out for themselves. Some do really. Actually, it isn't. And again, you're talking about resource capitalism. And capitalism is it isn't. You can't have a capitalist structure without at least a baseline educated populace. You need workers to work in places or whatever, and they have to be able to read and they have to be able to reason, and so it inherently creates a substructure that is alternative to, for example, slavery, which is not capitalism. These are distinctions, and again, this is where old words and their old definitions are completely useless in the discussion of modern economics, in all seriousness. So, anyways, love you guys. Thank you. Yes, hit that like. Thank you, Andrea, for reminding everybody. And thanks to Andrea for helping us coordinate guests. Come on now. Come on. Andrea, thank you so much. And especially with me and my fucked up schedule and my desire mostly to just pontificate. The idea of having guests on the show was antithetical essentially in the beginning, and now it's become a great norm. And so I appreciate her helping us get Boston Brian on and Texas Paul on and Tony and Phil and helping coordinate all that stuff and Bob, and yeah, it's gonna be so yeah. Yes, I'm having a show later. I will be on at the regular time. We have a lot to cover. Trump's latest speech. I might have to go late tonight. Because this is what a hard fade looks like. Trump is a fucking mess. And he knows it. And his people know it. It's ugly. And this Colorado thing is like, some of this stuff should just make him angry and give him energy. And, if he had any of the sort of intellectual capacity everybody thought he had, or the, stress rolls off like water off a duck's back or some shit like that. If any of that was true, he would be invigorated by some of this stuff. I'm almost at 50% number of likes divided by the number of people. Well, thanks. So let's try and hit the whole thing. So hit that like on your way out, especially if you're a troll, because let's face it, you'll like it here. Come on, trolls. Come on. I know you try to hate watch, but you like me. I know you're wearing the big R on your shirt and you got your MAGA hat on, and if I tell you to check the label and it says made in China, you're going to be very upset. Meanwhile, all of the merch that I have from Biden's campaign says union made. I know that's upsetting, but at the same time, you should be a little bit proud. Unless, of course, you're in a Macedonian troll farm and stuff, and you don't even understand really what I'm saying because the Google Translate takes a little while, and I speak in cute little colloquialisms all the time. And yeah, trolls are people too. We're good with some trolls. We'll manage. Anyways, I have some technical stuff to do with the show right after the show goes off the air because I couldn't get my little. This wasn't working, and then it had to shut down and stuff. I think I have to. Whenever I'm going to have a guest on, and especially if it's Phil and we're going to be hit with like weird fucking troll attacks somewhere, I'm fairly certain I'm going to have to like restart my computer and reset all my security settings again before every show. But yes, troll lives matter. It's okay. Paint it on the street in DC. There, I said it. And to also to the trolls. Look, I also know that you're sexually attracted to me. I get it. That's okay too. You're having some feelings you're not used to having. And There's no shame in it. Just because I don't reciprocate your feelings or I don't feel the same way doesn't mean you should be ashamed of them. And as soon as you kind of come to grips with that shame, you enter a world of openness and happiness. Welcome to the world. We don't yuck anybody's yum here, unless of course it's non-consensual. If one-sided yums aren't really a yum, they're a blech. Just saying. Yeah. We eat Troll House cookies around here. They're good stuff. Actually, it's not true. Note to both fans and fiends. It's a party foul to give a celebrity that you like food you made yourself, unless they're like you've been friends with them for a long time and it's become into a real friendship, and then they trust you, and and then bonk. Misery. But until that point, don't wrapped food only, and even then it should be delivered from a third party. Those companies in it, fruits on dolls, because it's not good form. It's not a good idea, and you don't even want your favorite celebrity to be lulled into a false sense of security about those kind of things. You just don't want to. And this comes from my personal awareness of a member of a cast member on a show I was on, let's just say in the very early 2000s, that received some food from a fan. It seemed a little off, and there was a concern. They were concerned that they might have drugs in them or something like that. They might try to drug them or something. And because it went through the studio, there's this thing where they'll literally send it to a lab and get it checked out, and what was really in there was the person's DNA. And let's just say they didn't cut themselves to get it. It was and it wasn't spit or earwax or snot. It was very specific. Person who sent it was male. Draw your own conclusions. So that's why. Don't get offended. Somebody you like, I baked you cookies. Yeah, it was very sweet. It really is sweet. It genuinely is. But for no fault of your own, there is no fucking way. Yeah, Mr. Dollarhide. Right. Yeah, was it? Was it? So, just saying, yeah. Absolutely. I won't eat anything that isn't covered in I only eat MREs, meals ready to eat from the army, and only before before they started fluoridating the goddamn water. So, yeah. Just saying. Yeah. No, nope. Love you, but nope. Nope, not anybody, not ever, nobody. Nope. No. And also, for the record, it is my belief that Howie Mandel and Roseanne aren't really germaphobes. Neither is Trump. You just shake enough hands. The first time they got a wart, they were like, I'm not shaking hands with anybody anymore. That's what it is. That's what it is. Most likely. Most likely. They got a wart. And then they got it burned off or whatever, and like, I'm not shaking hands with these motherfuckers ever again. The struggle is real. I would argue that some of the famous people who are like, I want to be left alone, I'm scared of the public and that kind of stuff, part of it comes from that. They're like, ooh, I'm not new. After they find out one of those things happened to either a friend of them or somebody they know, that'll make you stay in your house. That'll make you only come out for events. That'll make you, oh yeah. And by the way, that act in and of itself is, I would argue, non-consensual and a form of sexual assault. Just for the record, just in case we're doing something like that I described as roundly as I could, but dodging the details so as not to yuck everybody's yuck this early in the morning. Yeah, that's sexual assault. I'm just saying that was attempted sexual assault. Yeah, no No two ways about it. Just, yeah. So, um, and I would like to say, I would like you to remember that when you see me hugging people and shaking hands with people in the future, because as much as I've experienced some of that myself, it never lets me, I've never let it stop me from being a person. But it's always in the back of your head, a little bit. It's always kind of back there, because you got to be aware of it. And you're making, on the spot judgments about that kind of stuff. So, anyways, I don't know why that conversation came up other than just, I guess part of my head's been around like the Alex Jones chocolate cake thing. Right. I've told the Alex Jones chocolate cake story a couple times, but we'll tell it again sometimes. As a matter of fact, Alex Jones, you fucking twerp, let's have a conversation. So have me back on your show, chicken shit. Why do you only have people on your show that believe your bullshit? That's weird. It's like that as anybody's weird. Like, he doesn't have anybody on the regular. He doesn't have anybody skeptical about his bullshit on his show ever. I mean, you don't have to bring on somebody that's a government official or somebody to rebut it from an official source. I just bring on somebody who's like, dude, I personally think you're full of shit. Yeah, still no Dan Ball, by the way. He totally wimped out. Yeah. Hilarious. I was on Rogan's show once before, but I don't think he'll have me back on. He's far too big for a little show like mine. I mean, come on. And secondly, we have a very distinct disagreement about drugs, which we've been into before. But that's it. Yeah. So that's Alex and Vern, or whatever that fucking dude is, the Amish flat earther that he has on, filling in for him. But yeah, all of them chicken shit. They only have people on, if they have anybody on at all, it's only like sycophants and suck-ups. And I'd gladly do it. I'll gladly sit there and go, all right, give me your best shot. Tell me what you think is really fucking happening. Just give me one thing. Easy. I'll give you an easy layup. Fucking military industrial complex, Agenda 20, go. Let's just talk. Whatever. Also, I'm selling NFTs. These are just T's with NF on them. Unlike other NFTs, you can physically have them. This is something you can actually touch and exists in the real world. And so they're at the Twitch store and of course on my Teespring store. And so you can wear an NFT. And if anybody sees you wearing it, they will ask you a conversation about it. I gave one to my dad's friend, Sam Bush. He saw me wearing this. He was like, what does that mean? I was like, it's an NFT. And he was like, I have to have one. And I was so proud to send him an NFT. Oh, thanks, Jerry. There's a few. They're mentally ill, but that's okay. That's okay. I've been on Rogan's show long time ago, before the Spotify deal. Yeah. So, anyways, get an NFT today. It's a great Christmas gift. It's hilarious, by the way. It's a good Christmas gift. Just saying. You buy somebody an NFT for Christmas, buy them one of mine. I think it's a great gag gift, and you roll them up and they go great in a stocking. I'm just saying. Yeah, so I have a Spring store, and of course, there's also a version of it available in the Twitch store if you're on Twitch, which should be below the thing in the linky things. I don't know how that shit works. I'll work on it later. God damn it. I have to get better at I'm just not a professional streamer yet. My dream is to be a professional streamer, but one of these days.
Even outside, it's packed.